Thank you very much for having us. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for being involved. It is really important that we be involved and that we have the young adults and the future of this country being involved and paying attention to what's going on out there in the political arena. My name is Rae Perkins. I live in Albany with my husband, George. We're getting ready to celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary. We have 2 children and 14 grandkids. So life is a little bit busy. A little bit about my background. My background is in a lot in the financial services industry. I was a certified financial planner, financial advisor, real estate agent, personal banker. I have been in business, owned my own business, and my husband is self-employed as a carpet installation contractor. I'm a Main Street American. Been through the good, the bad, the ugly, the happy, the wonderful, and I love living in this country. It's another place that I would want to be. Why am I running? Sometimes in life, there's things that come along, and you know when you're supposed to do something, and this is a calling that I know beyond any shadow of a doubt as a Christian that this is something that God has called me to do, and this is something that I have been working on since 2009. This is my 3rd major campaign. I ran for the U.S. Senate nomination in 2014, ran in 2016, and this is the election that I know that Rae Perkins is going to win. How many of you in here like Donald Trump? Alrighty, very good. When then candidate and nominee Donald J. Trump did his acceptance speech at the Republican National Committee meeting in July 2016, I looked at my husband George and I said, who gave Donald Trump my campaign brochure? You want a candidate that's aligned with Donald Trump? You're looking at her. And it's the same things that I've been running on since 2014. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, good everybody. My name is Stefan Strek, and it's great honor to be here tonight. Thank you all for coming out. It's a fantastic crowd. I am also running for the 4th District Congressional seat, and people keep asking me why I'm running, so that seems like a good place to start. First off, I ran for mayor a couple years back for Eugene, and that started off just very simply. You know, I didn't like Kitty Piercy very much, and I heard about a cat up in Alaska that was mayor of a little town. You can look it up. His name is Stubbs. He has just won his last re-election again. Anywho, I figured my cat, Mr. Fluffykins, could do a better job than Kitty Piercy. So I looked into the process, because I always wondered, you know, how is it these same people that always end up on the ballot? But, you know, I feel like there's better options out there. So, turns out in Eugene, you can't just put a household pet on the ballot, but it's pretty easy to put yourself on. So I went through with that, and had a lot of good time, really. Learned a lot. Learned a ton, much more than you could learn here at the political science department. I'm sure it's a sink or swim experience. So, leading on that, I figured go for the bigger office and the bigger election, bigger pool, because walking around, there was a lot of people I talked to who said, yeah, I support what you're doing, but I don't actually live in Eugene city limits, so I'd vote for you if I could. So I wanted to make that possible, because so many people said that. I really believe in America. Had a lot of fun here. I went down to Australia and Europe to visit friends and family, and that's where I really learned that I really, really, really love America. So, you know, everywhere you go, people say, oh, you're from America, oh, that's awesome. You know, but some people make it so we don't have the best reputation here. People would say, oh, you know, you're not what I think of when I think of America. You're one of the good ones, whatever that means. So, you know, I think America needs better representation, and I think I can do that by sticking to the Constitution and promoting the rights of our citizens, and, you know, really cutting down on the fat in government. Whoever wins is up against DeFazio, who has over 500 bills that he's sponsored or co-sponsored that are just sitting around in Congress. And that's just, I mean, bills, you know, it's not one piece of paper, 500 thick bills, and that's just waste of time, waste of paper, and it's work that's never going to get done. So I think if I get the job, I can get the work done, I can stick to it. Thank you very much.
Fazio. He puts in a lot of bills, but he didn't get a pass. This reminds me of an experience I had a long time ago. When I finished at Caltech, I went to UC San Diego as graduate school. When I finished at graduate school, they handed me a piece of chalk and a faculty appointment and 300 freshman students in chemistry. And don't know what's worse for them or for me. In those days, the paradigm was there were no electronics. You walked in with this piece of chalk, talked for an hour, and tried not to make any mistakes in chemistry. In politics, it's almost impossible to be exactly right. My sons and I we're all scientists, and in 2010, we went to a meeting, saw Fazio, and we began to think it would be a good idea to have a scientist in Congress. There's only one, and he's quite liberal, so there really is no scientific representation in the U.S. Congress. One of our biggest economic competitors is China, and about half of the functionaries and higher functionaries in China are scientists and engineers. Doesn't mean that scientists and engineers should run the government, but it's not a good idea in the technological age to not have anybody in there that understands these things. So we signed up, ran against Fazio, and learned a lot about politics that we never wanted to know. But we didn't do too badly the first time. He then put on the usual campaign, telling us a lot of things about ourselves that weren't true, but they worked on the campaign, gradually drove our reputation down. And then this last election, we started coming up with. For the first time, we won 5 counties instead of 4, out of the 5 counties out of the 7 district 4. So I'm sort of happy with the fact that when Fazio goes outside of Lane Benton County, he's in places that didn't vote for him. Before that, Fazio had never won more than 1 county, lost more than 1 county in an election. He won Douglas once and Curry once, and the last election I won all 5 except for these 2. I handed something out to you. It's not politics, but one of the things you need to consider is you don't know what an individual will do when he goes to office. He doesn't even know. He knows what he wants to try. Most people are idealistic. My friend Ron Paul has written a lot about what happens when an idealistic person goes to Congress, and often it's not very good. But it is useful to know what the person's accomplished in life and what he does. I'm a scientist. I handed you 2 things. One's a resume. The other one is about a discovery we made this year about diagnosing heart disease and cancer with urine samples. And the reason that's there is I've taken quite a beating from the thousands of people because of my interest in metabolic profiling. So that shows you what it really is. I think that this time we have a reasonable chance to beat him, and I hope you select the best candidate to do that. And you're going to look at us today. I always ran the Robinson campaign in 2014. I spent most of my time away from Trump's side. I'm glad he's in office. He's doing an excellent job under the circumstances. So I won't run my mouth too long, but that's an introduction. I'm a scientist. I went to the wrong meeting one time, wound up chairman of the state Republican Party, so I had that experience too. But I believe he can be beaten, and I think we can do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this again. Thank you.
Okay, so you've all ran campaigns before in the past, and you haven't won in the past, obviously, or else you know, probably somewhere else, right? What are you doing differently this time around that makes you feel as though you have a chance of getting Eugene and the other counties that you typically don't win? Go ahead.
Well, since I started the first time out, we move on down. Stefan.
Yeah. All right, so doing things differently. Well, for the mayor's campaign, it's a much smaller pool of voters. It's a very specific group of people, and really there's not much opportunity to get the word out about things besides the Register Guard, Eugene Weekly, and the school's paper here, the Daily Emerald. So with this campaign, there's a lot more options. We already got a great interview with the Roseburg newspaper, and there's a lot of interest from other conservative areas. So I think this is a much better way to start. I am registered with the Republican Party, and that goes a lot further than trying to go independent. You have to pick a side, stick with the side you're on, and support the interests of those people. I believe very, very strongly in the Second Amendment, and I think that we have enough attacks on our constitutional rights and the rights of veterans, the rights of the elderly, that really need to be addressed. And all of that really isn't something that you can do on a local city level. These are issues that need to be taken up at a federal level. So I think that this is a much better place to be successful with my intentions. Thank you.
I think we're all engaged in really one thing. We're trying to save a constitutional republic on a very unprincipled playing field. Political playing field in the United States is really unusual, and of course we really do see that. Entrenched politicians like DeFazio are almost never beaten. Once they're in office, so many things flow their way. The community gets used to the fact that they're winning, so the newspapers don't want to oppose them. All sorts of advantages. So they're almost never beaten. Usually they just brush off one candidate and another as they go along, and that's what DeFazio did until we ran against him. As I said before, person pops his head up, runs, nice person, good ideals, and DeFazio just bats him away. To get rid of a guy like this is not a one election job. Not only do you have to learn this process, but you have to gradually bring your message into the electorate. When we first started out in 2010, he didn't see us coming. He was very surprised, wasn't ready for it. He figured he was going to bat away the next Republican. And the Wall Street Journal was calling the election even a few months into it. But then, of course, he got excited, realized what he was dealing with, and hit us between the eyes, and we didn't beat him. I think that if you want to dislodge this man, firstly, you want Republican principles and the things that we, most of us, I'm sure, share, represented well in the election, whether you're going to win or lose. But if you want to win against somebody like this, you have to, it's a long process. It's one campaign, and it goes on a long time. It doesn't go on in 2 years or one-year election. So we've done this. We assess our chances. We see what we've learned. I think we can whip him, but that's not for sure. It's tough. And because we think we've learned enough to win, we'll keep going. That's why I'm here.
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind whatsoever that I will beat the incumbent. He just started his 32nd year in Washington, D.C. He is a liberal. At one point, he was a member of the Socialist Democrat Party. He's since had his name removed off that list. I didn't win the primary the last time because I was misled by people that told me that some people were not going to get in the race, and they got in the race almost at the last minute, which kind of changed a little bit of how we were running the campaign. This time I was ready. I have the message, I have the passion, I have the calling on my life. And I go out and I talk with Main Street Americans. Like I said, I'm a Main Street American. I know what it's like to be out there. I've been in college. In fact, I just went back and got my degree in 2013, went to that school up north. Had I realized that the program down here in poli-sci was a little bit better, I would have taken the 40-minute drive every day from Albany. But I'm trying to save myself a minute. I have a grandson named Otson. And yes, he was named after Otson Stadium. But again, I know that I can win without a shadow of a doubt. There is no try, there is no I think. I can. I was also one of the 7 people elected by the Oregon Republican Party as an elector by our state party. And that is huge. It's a great honor. So had we taken Oregon red in the 2016 election with Donald Trump, I would have been one of the 7 people to cast the official vote for President Trump, which just even being elected, be an elector in itself is an absolute great honor. I'm also a precinct committee person. in Albany, in Lynn County. I was the chair for the Lynn County Republican Central Committee for almost 2 complete terms, 4 years minus a month. I was vice chair, and our chair had to step down, chose to step down because of a death in her family, and so I had to take it over the position. And so I've been very involved. I've been involved at the state level of the Oregon Republican Party, and I have led our platform planks. I am a 100% pro-life constitutional conservative candidate. I know where I stand. I'm bold, but I say a lot of things with a smile on my face. Thank you.
So, in the wake of the recent election, I think that the youth vote is becoming more and more important as people are, getting more active. In what ways are you guys trying to reach that specific audience? Because prior to this event, there's not much discussion about who's running for before amongst people our age.
Yeah, well, that's right. The youth vote is very important, and in addition, this is most important because the youth are going to live with what we got and what we created. The country moves slowly, economically and otherwise. These events are not quick. Most of the rest of my life will be spent in the Oregon country that I was privileged to grow up in. It may change slowly, but it's not changing so fast. But you will all live a long time in this country, and there are some trends which are very counterproductive in our city. The youth vote is very important. I was privileged to be endorsed always by Ron Paul. He even sent me campaign money, and Ron's a good friend. And we have many mutual friends, and those people mostly are oriented toward the youth vote. Even though you might be distressed to know that the average age of a Republican donor when you send letters out is 69 in the contributors. It's the older people that are supporting the elections. The youth, of course, don't have the resources yet to do it. But there's basically, you have a constitutional republic, a lot of unprincipled people that would like to go around that and enslave the youth. And there are all kinds of traps. When I was younger, you could go out, work hard, save your money, and buy a house. Today it's almost impossible to do that. Half of your money, one way or another, flows in taxation and other taxation methods to the administrative state. You see how tough these people are. President Trump went in there to do the job. He's been doing as best he can, but the administrative state, the military-industrial complex, the media, all of the people who benefit from a situation that enslaves the youth and puts you in a slot for the rest of your life that they want you to be in, are fighting our president. My expectation is that all 3 of the candidates that stand here today would like to avoid that. And since it's most important for the youth, it's very important. And in addition, the youth are much stronger campaigners. If you're younger, you can go door to door more, you can work hard. That's why Ron Paul has so much support. Just the youth of the country rose up behind him. Not quite enough to overcome the Republican establishment, but did a lot. So the youth will probably be the most important element of working in these campaigns. And it's most important too, because we have to live through what is created in our nation.
So the question now, less about why the youth the votes important, more how are you trying to engage them?
Engage them?
Yeah, like in what way are you trying to reach out?
People learn by example. Children learn by example. Adults learn by example. Our nation learns by example. So if you can live and work an exemplary life and then urge them to work in a life that depends upon a free republic, that should motivate. And it's working. I was here once before. I think it was all of you. It's a lot different now. Wonderful. The youth is realizing the situation they're in, and what you have to do is talk about the principles our country is founded on, that this is a constitutional republic, and we have to stop breaking the rules and let it function, let the republic function. And I think all you can do is talk about the founding principles and go out there and work hard to be the people in office to do it. If the youth sees that that's going on, they see that they have candidates working hard on it, that have good ideology and want to do the right thing, then I think they'll be motivated. I don't think the motivation is really any different for the youth than it is for all principled Americans. The problem is the youth are the most important because they have the most energy and the most at stake.
Well, certainly having a lot of young adults out there to help us knock on doors is important, but what I do is I sit down and I talk with our young adults. I want to know what's important to you. What are you concerned about as you look at your future? What do you see? I don't want to paint a bleak picture because I don't think it's bleak. Because we live in the United States of America, the one country that the vast majority of people that when they want to immigrate, where do they want to immigrate to, Anna? America. America. So it's important to find out what is important to them. What do you care about? Talking with people from around the world. I worked at OSU for 2.5 years, the Animal Rangeland Science Department, a lot of international people. This is something I found out. The vast majority of people out there all want the same things. They want to love, they want to be loved. They want a job that they can provide for their families, have a roof over their heads, and enjoy life. They don't want to deal with all the conflicts that happens in the political arena. They really don't. That's why we see so much disassociation, is because people get tired of listening to the talking heads talking about all the infighting that goes on out there. Meantime, nobody's talking to the up-and-coming generation, the next generation, the next leaders. And y'all are leaders. That's why you're in here. If you weren't leaders, none of you would be in here. And so that's what I do. When I worked at OSU, I asked the students, what are your plans? Allison, I asked her, what are her plans? She's going to be graduating in March. She's going to be going to New York and get her working, going into the nursing field, which is awesome. See, I want to know what people care about, and that's what I'm doing to attract the youth vote. Thank you.
Right out. So the youth vote. So far as getting the youth vote, I have something that, to my knowledge, neither of my opponents have. That's memes. I've got some really, really good memes, and I've got some really good social media going on. With Twitter, if you go to @real Stefan Strek, I've got some great memes up there. I've got over 7,000 Twitter followers already. And by the time the primary comes, I expect to have more base of supporters than Peter DeFazio has. And that's a great way to start off. Leading by example, I mean, I like to suggest that other people get involved, but I don't like telling other people what to do. People say, ah, well, you got it, man. You speak for me. And I'm like, all right, I can do that. So, I just try to keep it low stress, keep the memes going, and have a good time. I've got a ticket booked to go visit my friend in Amsterdam for mid-June for a couple weeks, get some sightseeing, relax after the election, and hopefully come back and be ready to get gearing on the general. So, thank you very much. That's my plan.
So, the day after the election, and you each did the snares, find out that you won. What is the first thing that you're doing as representatives?
I'm going to Disneyland. Actually, that's true. That is true. My birthday is May 9th. My husband and I sort of kind of want a trip to go to California, and we decided that we would go out the day after the election, take a couple days off, kind of take a breather, come back, and it's going to be nonstop, just about 24/7. And so we're going to Disneyland. I live in Southern California, and I love going to Disneyland, and so that's what we're going to do. We'll visit my brother down in Oceanside, and like I said, then we'll come back and go at it really hard and not stop until the day after the election when we pack my bags to Washington, D.C.
As far as,
Oh, the campaign stuff, boy. See, I took it literal.
I know.
Gee, Liz. It's going to be doing more of what I've been doing to get there. It's going to be, I'm not going to change. I am who I am. And I don't change with every breath of the wind that comes along. It's going to be talking to more voters, talking to the people that could not vote for me in the primary, because Oregon does have, thank God, a closed primary. So people that are not registered as Republicans will not have the opportunity to vote for me. So I will be talking to them. There's going to be a lot of Democrats that will not vote for me, and I don't expect them to vote for me because we're not going to see eye to eye. But what I will be doing is going out there and talking with people, as I have been doing, and I start off with a premise of what do we have in common. Most conservatives, when they're talking to people that are liberal, start off with what they don't agree on. And they end up doing this, and we never get anywhere. We agree on way more than what we disagree on, and that is part of my message is, what do we agree on? And I've talked about it already when I talk to people from other countries. Basic needs, that's what people agree on. So I will be taking that same message and then going out and talking to the non-affiliated voters, the independent voters, and yes, some Democrats. And I already have Democrats that have told me I have their vote in the general. They've already told me that, a lot of them, that I talk to, because they know that I get it, that I understand, and the things that are important to them are the things that are in my campaign brochure, the things that I've been running on since 2014. And so that's, after we get back from Disney, and I'm only going to be gone for a couple of days, that's what I'm going to be doing, is out there talking with everybody else.
All right, so day after the election, if I win, Congress has a lot of people in it that they hit some low blows. Honestly, these guys in Congress are pretty savage. In my opinion, it's going to be pretty much like going back to elementary school. So my first step is going to be to mock every single person who said that they didn't think I could win. That would be top priority, number one. Got goodie bags of Tide Pods, something like that. And then it's going out to meet people. I love meeting people. I really like senior citizens. We get along great, honestly. I'll probably buy a new gun. I love guns. I love shopping for guns. I always ask people, hey, you want to go shopping? I'm like, I'd like to, but I just don't have any money, and that's too bad for them. But I think everybody should have more money. Everybody should support local business, local economy, and that's basically how I'm going to cut on it. Yes.
Sorry, I probably should have been a little bit more clear in my phrasing, but like first, piece of legislature, what action to change? What change are you going to do the first day?
First piece of legislature. You're talking about general election.
What's your priority when you get this position?
Yeah. All right. Well, first priority top is to criminalize the infringement on Second Amendment rights. For example, you steal someone's gun. That's a crime of stealing a firearm, but it's really not addressed as an attack on someone's human rights, which is how it should be addressed. A legislator that promotes legislation that infringes on your civil rights should be treated as a criminal. And I would work to pass some legislation that could take people who are trying to take guns away and have them locked up. That's my top priority.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but that's a different question.
Sure, would you like to?
I would.
Yeah.
Thank you for that opportunity. Oregon is the only state out of 50 states that allows abortion up until the moment that child is born. You all know about Roe v. Wade, right? How many of you have heard of Doe versus Bolton? One person knows what Doe v. Bolton is. Doe versus Bolton is a Supreme Court decision that was made shortly after Roe v. Wade, which allowed late-term abortion. And if that is not already taken care of by the time I'm in Washington, D.C., January 2019, I will have the bill written to overturn Doe versus Bolton. It is the most heinous thing ever. And to even live in a state that allows such a thing is unconscionable. And to me, that is so important. Our Declaration of Independence says life. And to me, if we're not protecting the most vulnerable among us, by the way, the only other two nations that allow what Oregon allows, North Korea and China. Thank you.
Both ways. First day I'll be calling my friends on the phone. I told Lillis and a professor at MIT, who's our finest climatologist, that if I win the election, he lost his vacation, because I want to be filling the slots of the congressional office with outstanding people. I think we probably agree on all these issues. I have about 120,000 Facebook friends. They're mostly young people that want the country to thrive. And DeFazio quoted me only once correctly. I said I was rabidly pro-life, and he actually quoted it accurately because he thought it would help him. As far as guns are concerned, I remember my first speech in 2010, and I lost because the lady against me was carrying her gun while she was speaking, and I wasn't. She pointed this out. But and after that, I watched out, especially in Coos County, where the sheriff was always checking to see if you were carrying your concealed weapon permit whenever you came to this county. But so you start on several things simultaneously, but you're looking to somebody to say what they think is most important. Probably, although I'm strongly pro-life, strongly Second Amendment, I think we probably have the same views on those things. I'd probably start in education because I'm an educator. Our schools in the country, when I went to school, we had, by all measures, the finest K-12 education in the country. Today, we're sort of at the bottom of the heap. In our universities, when I went to school, you're not going to believe this, but I paid half of my way through Caltech. It cost me room, board, and tuition $2,000 a year to go through that school. Today it's $60,000, and you all have to face that problem. We have to do something about the explosion in education costs in the universities. And I understand this, and it really has to change because everyone needs to have the best education they can. And it's becoming harder and harder to get a good education in this country. So I'd probably start there, but you don't start in one place. You have to start with each of these things. The pro-life issue is a long fight and largely something in the courts, and you don't have a lot to say about it as a congressman. You can put in bills. The Second Amendment is a similar thing. There are a lot of things we can do in education, by example, because the Congress has total control of the schools of D.C., which is 50,000 students, 67% are black, larger percentage are Hispanic, and those are the worst schools in the country. He could start to get right on day one, making those into good schools and try to spread by example. So I think if you want one thing that I'd probably be thinking about the first day of the education, but all of these things are important. And as far as your futures, probably the single most important thing to you will be the economic position of the United States while you are living here. We have a tremendous economic competition going to China now, and we have to have a tax environment, a regulatory environment, and a healthy environment in our country so that free enterprise can beat the Chinese. They're not stupid, they're smart. And although it's a totalitarian government, they have found a way to combine totalitarianism with economic competition. So we have a tremendous economic challenger there. We can only beat them economically. Talking about militarily beating places like that is just insanity. And these things, the taxation, it includes the debt they run up in your name, all the ways in which they get money away from you. The way they take money, the administrator takes money out of our pockets, diminishes our economy. The way it regulates us so that we aren't free to pursue things that would be beneficial in businesses. It takes a lot out of us, and we have to reverse those things. And we have to reverse our energy policies too. I've written a lot about energy. Because if we don't, during much of your life, you will live in a country where the world is dominated by a power that is not good for you. So probably the economic issues are the most important to you long run, even though the
respectfully, please.
Stefan, if you were to get elected, would you up your new content on your Twitter
Next
page?
question.
Mr. Perkins, you say you are the female version of the president, but you didn't specify which version of it. Was it the candidate Trump or the President Trump? Because when he was running for nomination, he was for, at one point he was saying he was for single-payer health care. But when he got into office, the first thing he tried to do is repeal Trump. So which version of Trump are you?
I'll start off with the Affordable Care Act, AKA Obamacare. It needs to be repealed, not replaced. Government does not belong in the medical insurance business. It's not their job. They're terrible at it. You can tell that by the veterans. Take a look at my brochure. You will see the things that I stand for. Then being pro-life, which is absolutely 100% huge beyond any shadow of a doubt. Pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of, not from, religion. One of the things that I campaigned on the last time, which was not in my brochure, was overturning the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment was put into place when Lyndon Baines Johnson was a U.S. Senator running for re-election in Texas. Churches were speaking out against him. Said this is an evil man, don't re-elect him. And so we got an amendment put onto a bill. And what that bill said is if you're a 501c3 corporation and you promote or denigrate any political candidate, your tax-exempt status is subject to being removed from you. It needs to go away. It's a violation of our First Amendment in 2 places. It's an area that President Trump talked about during his nomination. President Trump has actually done a lot of things that he's talked about. Our veterans, he's talked about our veterans. Our veterans should be able to get medical care from any doctor, anywhere, any medical practitioner that they want, that is convenient to them without them having to pick up the phone, call some call center in the Midwest to schedule an appointment. I can call my doctor's office and within 10 minutes I have an appointment. They're lucky they get called back within 10 days to get the appointment scheduled. They should be able to go to the doctor that is convenient to them. Veterans in Eastern Oregon. They get on a bus that is provided them by the VA. A volunteer drives them the 5 hours from Eastern Oregon to the VA office, VA hospital in Portland. More times than not, they will sit there all day long and not get seen. This is the United States of America. These are men and women that put their lives on the line. It should never happen in this country, and that's an area that President Trump is working on. So I am with President Donald John Trump. Thank you.
Ms. Perkins, another question for you, actually. You were saying about the Supreme Court decisions of Doe versus Bolton, is that correct? As far as I know, I don't think the legislative branch can overturn any Supreme Court decisions.
Actually, the Supreme Court cannot make law, so their decision to even do that is judicial activism, and it's actually unconstitutional.
Right. And that's my question. How do you, what specific thing are you to overturn that?
We're going to write a bill that says that there cannot be any late-term abortion. The Supreme Court legally cannot overturn that decision. The Supreme Court can only interpret law according to what the Constitution says and not what we think the Constitution says it means today. It is what the founders meant when they wrote that Constitution, not today's definition of what people think that it means. So, the Supreme Court is there to interpret laws in accordance to the Constitution to make sure that those laws are not in violation of the Constitution. Thank you.
So, I mean, this is just kind of a general one, I guess. Basically, knowing our political opponents, you know, the Democratic Party, they, like, let's say either any of you get, you know, win the primary. if anything, like how will each of you, if there are any scandals, any arrests, anything, they will use anything, as I'm sure you all know. How will you guys work past that if anything comes up? Because especially with something like the Oregonian, if anything from that comes up, because that's a pretty credible source here.
I'd like to address that. Very few times do I get really, really upset. I don't believe in doing smear campaigns, especially in the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, do not denigrate another Republican. Anything that we say and do in the primary, the Democrats will use it against us. You guys have this article here? It's about when I was arrested. And I was charged with 2 Class C felonies. By the way, my record is expunged. Try to find it today. So the fact that Art Robinson's friend brought this today to smear me, in all honesty, is low. It's low. But I don't hide from this. See, I could have actually had my record expunged before this was ever put out there. But I don't have anything to hide. What happened? My son, who is now almost 38 years old, was living with us, decided to go get a hamburger, December 28th. He was driving with a suspended license for an unpaid traffic ticket. He's never had a DUI, and he does not have a record whatsoever. He saw the policeman behind him, so he went around the corner, parked the car in front of the house, and went inside. Now, I happened to be asleep. I heard some commotion, and it's Stephen. Okay, whatever. I fell back asleep. Next thing I know, it's a knock at my door, and I answer the door. It's a policeman. He's there for my son. That unpaid traffic ticket was 3 years old, by the way, because they had a warrant for his arrest from Salem, and we live in Albany, as I said. Why are you guys not out there looking for criminals? This is an unpaid traffic ticket from Salem, Oregon. That's 3 years old. If it was really important, you guys would have been here 3 years ago. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. They said, well, we have to arrest him because we've got this warrant. I said, well, he's asleep. Yeah, but you see, he was eluding us. What do you mean he was eluding you? If he was eluding you, his car would not be parked in front of my house. That's not eluding. Eluding means you are taken off and you're trying to hide. And by the way, we live about a quarter mile from the county line. So we could have easily gone on to the county side where the sheriff would have to go chase him down and not the city police. I refused to allow the police into my home because they did not have a search warrant to come into my home. And I was 100% within my constitutional rights because they didn't have a search warrant. Policeman said, we're coming in anyway, and I shut the door and I said, I'm not giving you permission to enter into my home. The policeman pulled the storm door out of my hand and I said, stop. And I never touched them, ever, because I know better. Policeman looked at me and kept on going and I stepped back. I reached over, my entry, there were 5 doors in the entry to a house. The office, which is where my son's bedroom was, the bathroom, the hallway, my bedroom, closet door. I shut my bedroom door so my husband could sleep. I shut the hallway door so my grandkids would not see their daddy get arrested. Policeman turned around when I shut the hallway door and said, arrest her. And I said, what? And I was charged with harassment and hindrance for standing up for my constitutional rights. And I would do it today. That's what this is about. Thank you.
So now that we all know that, I guess what I was really alluding to was how, if you're the nominee, how will you work past that if the Democrats try to bring that up?
I just did. I will do exactly what you just saw me do. That's why I did that, because that is exactly what I would do. By the way, when this article came out, I was running for the U.S. Senate, I got letters and emails from people saying, you just got my vote because you were willing to stand up against the police and their tyrannical behavior. And that is what we need, is somebody that is strong enough, that is not going to back down against injustices and against our constitutional rights. We have rights. And for far too long in this country, we've had people sit around and go, oh, I can't do that because of the police. No, I'm sorry, you've got constitutional rights, stand up for them. You have the right to do that. So I would do exactly what I just did. Thank you.
You want the other two to answer?
It'd be cool if they want to, I
Do you have
mean,
any thoughts on that?
because accusations do come
All
up.
right. Yeah, well, this is actually a really perfect question, the perfect answer for this. Well, first off, I don't know why, but for some reason, people like to think I do things that I don't do sometimes. And, you know, probably since I was 14, I've probably been stopped and questioned by the police something like 5 or 6 times a year. So it's like 60, 70 times. And, you know, I don't know why, but, you know, I have never had any issues with the police. I always respect the police. Whenever I get pulled over, stop, say, oh, how can I help you, officer? But, you know, U.S. citizen, police officer, what can I do for you? And, you know, it really goes back to when I was in 2nd grade. Some kid thought I stole his Pokemon keychain. Kids used to have those stuff hanging off their backpacks back in the day. Very 90s. Anywho, I did not steal this kid's Pikachu. The kid went to the teacher and asked the teacher to investigate this issue. And, you know, because I was just, you know, smiling. I thought it was hilarious that this kid thought I took his Pikachu.
A little more on topic.
All right, on topic. With the police, basically, you know, dirt washes off. I have no problem with, you know, hearing something crazy and like, keep it coming. I've heard worse. You know, there's almost nothing that someone can just like make up off the spot that I haven't dealt with before. So this next year coming up, I mean, anything the Democrats have to throw out, that's no problem. I'll be like, nope, absolutely. So that's how I deal with that. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I've lived quite as interesting a life. Any skeletons are in my closet, they found them, because they've been looking hard. They manufacture some, but that doesn't work too long. But I get to tell a story, they got to tell a story. When I was a graduate student, closest I ever came to the police in this regard, I was, before I went to Stanford, I was teaching at UCSD, and I came home one night and I noticed the lights were a little different in my apartment there. And so I watched. I stood across the street and watched. I watched the guy pick up some of my possessions and walk toward the back of the house. So I ran, but we didn't cell phones, right? I ran down the street. I found a payphone and called the police. Then I ran back down the alley behind my apartment. As I get up to the apartment, a guy comes out of the shed. It's 2 in the morning. This guy comes out of the shadows at 2 in the morning, and he wants to know why I'm running. And I'm not arguing with the guy at 2 in the morning in my backyard. I told the police were after me. I was trying to get away. And he gave me some advice about where to hide. The police came around the corner. I went over and visited with them. Went over and checked to make stuff was missing from the house. And then I told the officer, he went behind those bushes over there. The guy stayed there to see what happened. So they rolled him up and got a couple other robberies. So, I don't agree with the line, but sometimes it fits this poor fellow. But if you run for office, you will suddenly discover you have many skeletons that you don't have. That's what it's done. There aren't any. They've been working on me for 6 years. You're not going to hear anything new except that I'm a racist and I'm going to put radiation in your drinking water. And I'm fascinated with urine, which is why I gave you that. Although there are 5,000 people in this district that are contributing urine samples to this project. So it almost becomes amusing, and it's one of the reasons we got a shot at this guy, because people are beginning to get tired of it. He's out today with the same list. And even in Eugene and Corvallis, people are beginning to get tired of it. And that is one of the reasons we got a good shot at it. But I'm sorry I don't have anything to report. Okay.
I have a question for Dr. Robinson. I've heard reports, and I would like to hear you comment on the report from the president, Mike picking you for a cabinet position, as well as Steve Forbes and Ron Paul's endorsement in your name.
Yes, this is true, but I won't talk about it because it would be a tremendous honor to have such a position. The best way to do it is to start talking about it in public. People, prominent people have suggested me for such jobs, and he has a lot of unfilled positions now that we want to have. I don't know whether I have any chance at those, but to the degree I know about it, I can talk about it as a friend. Didn't give us a chance to have an opportunity. I barely know the president. He probably doesn't remember me, but there are a few people that have been charitable about me.
And then as well as that, could you please speak on your endorsement by, or can you speak on Ron Paul and Steve Forbes endorsing him as well?
Well, I've known Steve Forbes for about 15 years, and I've spoken at conferences that he ran several times. And I was delighted. I didn't know he would do this, but when we started running, he did radio ads for me. It was a privilege. Ron Paul, we have a lot of mutual friends. Ron is different, and you read some of the things he's written recently. He talks about how to fix the country. He's not too enthusiastic about fixing it by getting the best candidates, because he notices so many people come to Washington with principles and manage to change. And he's been telling people, and what he's been writing recently, that we need to educate people so that they have good, solid ideology and principles before they go there, rather than just electing who can get into office. He came up that way, and we had a lot of mutual friends, and they worked at places like the Foundation of Economic Education and so on. If you look at his background, he was members in all of those things, and learned thoroughly the Constitution and the principles of the country before he went to office. And that caused me to be privileged to know him. And when I ran for office, I asked for his endorsement. And I remember when I asked in his office, and I sent him one of my campaign flyers. And he said, well, this is all pretty good, Art, but I don't see much about the war. And I said, well, I haven't written much about it because I don't know much about it. It's all classified. Well, he says the things you don't know are, and then I got a nice lecture from Ron about the war. But it's a privilege to have his endorsement, and one time I was surprised I opened the mail, and it was $5,000 from him to run for office, which was, I told him I didn't know whether I should cash it or frame it. I almost wish I'd framed it because I didn't win the election. So these are privileges to know such people, and most of them are really remarkable. Our country has been built by those people, and it's still full of them. They're everywhere. And if we can move more of them back into our government, it'd be fine.
This is Strek. Question for you. You don't seem to be very serious about this race. And you haven't mentioned.
Oh, I was just going to, yeah. So, or kind of answered my with that one, but yeah. So, in terms of setting, you were talking about setting an example, right? And like you were saying, a lot of people with good intentions get to Washington and then kind of lose their moral and spiritual way. So, you know, is there anything like concrete besides educating people, any kind of legislation you might be thinking of in order to kind of lessen the grip of you know, unions on one side, multinational corporations on the other side?
The problem is a lot of legislation empowering the problem. There's so many ways in which the organization and the legislation that's been passed contribute to this problem. An idealistic, I was almost parroting Ron in his article, an idealistic person goes to Washington with great ideals and intention to do the right thing, and they say to him, well, if you want to be on a committee, you want to be reelected, you need to be here about 10 years before you have enough power to get anything done. So play ball with us, join our game. And when you are powerful enough, you can do what you came for. And of course, after about 10 years, we've forgotten it. Boards are principled enough to participate.
Against that. That's why I know that I would never be bought off, because I've already proven, based on years of being in business, that I'm not for sale. Thank you.
Mr. Strek, you don't seem to be very serious about this race. As the only thing you mentioned so far that memorable is me and Pikachu. You haven't mentioned anything that will help you win the elections. Are you just here for the giggles and name recognition or something else?
Oh yeah, I really appreciate that question, King. So, seriousness. Being too serious about things doesn't make a lot of friends, and you need friends if you're going to win an election to Congress. So, that's pretty simple. But if you want to hear something that's been on a more serious tone, I'll just tell you why I'm pro-life in the aspect of protecting senior citizens. Oregon is pretty much the only place with an assisted suicide clause. It's a Dutch Community Act. And my grandfather, the only grandfather I ever knew, was, in my opinion, unjustly killed because of that law. He was staying at an adult foster care facility, and they were deplorable conditions. They were prisoner of war conditions. It was horrifying. And the way this ended is he had an accident where he hit his head, and the facility wouldn't take the initiative to get him to the hospital. So I was there visiting. I realized the situation. I took the time to take him to the hospital in my car, and they gave him essentially a clean bill of health. This is a great guy. He could have conversations with people, get around on his own. They actually had to put a alarm on his door because he was just trying to go out for walks in like the middle of the night. He was, you know, an active guy. So they sent him back to the foster care facility to recover, have good health. And you know, I left. It was my girlfriend at the time's birthday, so I took a couple days off. And when I came back, I saw that they had removed the feeding tube, which was supposed to you know, keep him alive and help him recover. So I tried to get that fixed. I called the state, tried to have Adult Protective Services remedy the situation and provide proper health care. It wasn't something that could be really done at that time. By the time the doctor came out to try and correct this, he said there's, you know, 48 hours without food and water for a 95-year-old man. We can't reverse this situation right now. So, you know, I took the initiative at that time to do the best I could with the situation. And I'm a Catholic. I went to Catholic school. My grandfather paid for that. And I started calling priests. You know, he needed his last rites done. This is something that nobody else would do. It was my job. So, got a priest out there, took care of him that way. And, you know, I wanted to see him have a good condition in some way before he died in this place. So I went out with a friend and stopped by Albertsons and talked to the manager and explained the situation that my grandpa was dying and he had nothing. He had literally nothing. Because it had either been stolen from him or he'd just given it away because he was a nice guy. And I spent about like $120 on flowers, and the manager was a really nice guy. He could tell I was having a hard time and gave me a couple dozen bouquets of roses, and you know, it was really hard for me to, you know, keep myself together at that point. And you know, the next morning when I woke up there, I stayed the night in the place because I didn't want to see him go, but you know, I wanted to be there and watch him be taken away. I, you know, really set the resolve to do what I could to protect other elderly people from being abused in this country and to have this law changed. Because I don't object to people who want to end their own life. You know, it might be against my religion, but I believe in people's rights to make their choices, but I don't believe in taking someone else's life unnecessarily. So that's one of my top priorities, if elected to Congress, is defending the elderly. And that's not a very happy story to tell, but I've got lots of stories which aren't very happy to tell, which do have a pretty good lesson that I learned in the end. I just don't like telling very serious stories that don't really make people happy. I like to see people happy. But thank you for that question, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
So I wanted to ask Rae Perkins, actually, where do you stand on DACA?
Oh, that is a wonderful question, Anna, thank you. On my website, there's a paper that I wrote, my white paper. It's titled Dreamers, DACA, and Their Parents. In my opinion, in my view, you cannot hold the child responsible for the illegal actions of their parents. Many of the dreamers, which are in your age group, were brought here as children. Isn't that insane? For many of them, this is the only country that they've ever known. Many of them, they don't identify with the country where they were born. And to send them back to a land that they don't know, I don't think is humanely the right thing to do. This is my solution. Within 60 days of passing an act that is signed into law, they would have to declare that they intend to become U.S. citizens. 60 days. It has 6 years to get it done. During that 6-year time frame, if they have a criminal conviction, they cannot become a U.S. citizen. They also would not be eligible for any federal assistance whatsoever. No food stamps, no HUD housing, no Pell Grants, no federal student loans. Now, if a state or local agency wants to help them, perfectly legitimate. That's okay with me. Doesn't bother me. During that 6 years, they also can make deposits into an account in their name for the cost of becoming a U.S. citizen, currently $725. By the way, that would be non-refundable to them. If something happens, they cannot become a U.S. citizen. But it would also lock it in for them. So if the cost did go up, which I would expect it would still be whatever the current cost is at the time they started making their deposits. The only two exceptions that I would see, if they didn't get it completed in the 6 years, is they are active military service and they are deployed, or they are so sick it was an impossibility to do that, and that would be on a case-by-case basis. That's the dreamers. Their parents. Their parents get two options. Option number one, they self-deport. And then they apply for reentry. They can come back with their spouse. That was the person that they were married to when they first illegally came into the country. If they were not married to that person when they first came here, sorry, you did not get to come in together. You will be separate decisions. 90 days after they return, they would have to do the same thing as the dreamer age children. In addition, they would also have to show that they have 6 months of living income put into a U.S. bank account or a notarized affidavit that they have a job for where it is that they're going to be moving. Their second option. Oh, and any of their minor children that were born in the United States while they were here illegally are not U.S. citizens. And the same for baby. And no more of this chain migration. So even for the dreamers, they don't get to do a bunch of chain migration. Their second option is they don't self-deport. They don't self-deport. Of course, they're always subject to being deported. They can never get any federal assistance. They're not going to qualify for Social Security. Well, they might be able to, if we decide they can stay here legally. But it would have to be a one-at-a-time thing, but they could never, ever become U.S. citizens, ever, unless they self-deported and see if they can legally come back into the country. It is not amnesty. And by the way, it needs to be backdated, not future dated. It needs to be set at a date. You have to have been here by December 31st of, let's say, 2007. That was the problem with Ronald Reagan's immigration, is that it was not a date that was far enough in the past. So again, it's a way of saying, okay, let's be realistic. A lot of these people that are here, the Dreamer age students, they're your friends, you know who they are. They shouldn't have to hide in the shadows, and again, they consider themselves to be U.S. citizens. I'm not a heartless person. I would not want to be kicked out of the U.S. and told I have to go back to Israel or some other country that I don't even know because my parents came here illegally. I would want to do everything that I could to stay here, but again, there has to be some really tight rules. And for the minor children, oh, the other thing, if the parents don't self-deport, and I have to go back in and fix my paper because I missed it, they risk their minor children. So if they choose not to self-deport, they risk their minor children never being able to become U.S. citizens. So I want to put a carrot out there and give people a reason to leave and apply to come back in legally for the ones that are adults and brought their children here illegally.
All right, some closing remarks. Try to keep it like under 2 minutes.
I think the President has articulated a position on your question just recently, in which he basically says the children that were shipped here to game the system, it wasn't their fault, he must take care of them, otherwise he doesn't want people to break the law. It's pretty sensible, and there are a lot of ways to do that. I think that if we're nominated, I always say we because all my sons and daughters work together. We're sort of a family effort. We're especially close because their mother died 30 years ago, so we all grew up together. I think we can win for you, or we wouldn't be standing here, but I can't tell you we're going to win because the positive is tough. I encourage you to realize that this is not sort of a one-off. Somebody comes along and puts him. That doesn't happen with people like Fazio. And you were speaking, I wanted to say this one thing. When I got out of graduate school, I loved the laboratory. I said, this is fantastic. I'm going to play all my life, and people are going to pay me for it. And then I thought more about it as time passed, and I said, no, you need to give something back to the people that are paying the bills. And that the highest possible thing that we can imagine is the privilege to live the human life. So I, from then on, said that I would work on things that would increase the quality, quantity, and length of human life. I spent half of my life in research and half research on fundamental chemistry and half of it in medical research. I point out, and I've given you a handout, that I've been successful at that, and I think my abilities could do a good job for you if I get the job. And I think we can get the job if you nominate us, but I can't tell you that for sure. Thank you.
All right, so public statements are basically going back to the way I started this. I really, really, really love America. And that's because I've traveled the world and met a lot of people, and I've also traveled America. I mean, I was born in Massachusetts. I lived in Georgia for 6 years. I think I can connect with people from around the country and help actually get legislation passed, not just talking to people within the party, but across party lines. And I've always loved Washington, D.C. I remember the first time I ever went there, I was like 5 years old for a wedding, and I remember seeing the Lincoln Memorial, and it seemed like, 50 feet high, and every time I go back since, the statue gets a little bit smaller. So, I really think that I can do good things and really help people if I get this job. And I'll work really hard at it. The last job I had, I kept for 10 solid years. Started working when I was 17. And the new job I've got is great. I take papers from a stack, check them over, and put them in another stack. It's basically what Congress does, except they don't even move them from one stack to the other. So I think I can do this job, and I know that if I get this job, I'll do a great job at it. Thank you very much. And if you're in this district, I hope for your vote. I've got a website, www.votestrek.com. I've got an excellent tech team that is working to update that from the mayor's campaign. And please check the Twitter account. There's some good stuff on there, @Real Stefan Strek. So, hope you all have a great night. Thank you very much for coming down here.
Well, again, thank you all for your attention and for the great questions. Sometimes it's a challenge. I started off with saying I'm a Main Street American. I've gone through the highs and the lows. By the way, when I said that I did not know that that piece had been given out, I asked Stefan, I said, I want to take a look at that. I want to see what it was. Yeah, I got upset about it because I think it's below the belt, and I think that as Republicans we should be working a lot higher than below the belt. I make a promise. See, when you go into Congress, one of the very first things they do is they go, oh, by the way, we expect you to raise $10,000 a week, or you're not going to get reelected. I am not a professional fundraiser. I have no intention of becoming a professional fundraiser. It's not in the job description, the Constitution. It doesn't exist. And I'll push back on that. I've had friends say, well, Rae, you're not going to get very many committee appointments. And I said, I don't care. So I'm not there to get committee appointments. I'm there to do the job of the people according to what the Constitution says. And that is to shrink the size of the federal government because it's too big, it's too bloated. When I started this journey in 2009, federal debt was just under $10 trillion. Today is in the neighborhood of $21 trillion. In fact, I had friends ask me to run in 2010 before Art got in the race. And I said it's not the right time, but I prayed about it. And this is a true story. Lord, should I get in the race now? Because I was showing people in my practice how to get out of debt. This is what the Lord said to me. No. By the time you get to Washington, D.C., the country will be so deep in debt, the American people will be ready to make the deep sacrifices necessary to turn the country around financially. And my response was, Lord, how much worse can it get? Double. I did not expect that. But he stretched the imagination. Clearly, I'm a person of passion, and I don't back down easily. You want to know one of the ways I'm like Donald Trump, I think I showed you earlier, Amy. But I make a promise to you. Number one, my staff and I will read every single bill before I vote on it. And we will start going through that bill to make sure that it is aligned with the job of the Congress according to what the Constitution says. Number two, it needs to be a single-issue bill. None of this earmarks, none of this bloated spending, none of this, hey, I want my bridge built to nowhere, none of this Johnson Amendment things that pony on them. They need to be simple. 2,000-page bills are ridiculous. Number three, it needs to be conservative, both fiscally and socially. If any of those bills fail, one of those, it's an automatic no. It's time we have people of solid principle. Not perfect. I have flaws, just like everybody else. Skeletons escaped out of my closet a long time ago. And you were given an article showing some of those skeletons. But you see, I never hid from it. Ever. That's why I didn't get my record expunged when I ran for the U.S. Senate in 2014, and I was certainly eligible. By the way, the charges were all dismissed. I ask for your vote before you leave. I have a petition I would love your signature on. If you haven't signed it, it is a petition to put my candidate statement, which is virtually what is in my brochure, in the voter guide. I can give the state of Oregon $2,500 for them to not do any work, or I can give them the signatures that they have to approve of at least 300 registered voters in the 4th Congressional District, and give them some work to do. And that is the option that I've chosen to do. I know beyond any shadow of a doubt that when I receive the nomination, Peter DeFazio will be entering into the retirement that he's been wanting for many years now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Nice to have that conversation, that dialogue. And I hope everyone learned a lot about our candidates today. And if there's a way that they can reach out if they feel inclined to help you, just real quick, websites or
On the website.
okay.
Y'all have my card. If you don't have my card and brochure, I've got them up here. And we've got lovely window stickers.
All right. So that kind of ended up. Yeah, we're actually 30 minutes over, so I'll just go run through this pretty quickly. In the news, George messaged me, wanted me to put this. There's this trend going on Twitter and on Facebook called "Release the Memo." Does anyone have any idea what that pertains to? I've heard theories about it, and I've heard like it sounds like a super exciting bill that we really want just the details. But yeah,
Isn't it the FISA memo?
Yeah, it's the FBI's abuse of the FISA courts to get warrants to spy on, I guess, the Trump campaign. But I mean, they could have been used to spy on other campaigns as well. It was just a FISA court abuse on the part of the FBI. So the Republicans in Congress want it released, and Democrats are saying, well, it's misleading, so they don't want it released. So.
I do find it funny that President Trump tweeted like a year ago that he was being wiretapped by the Obama administration. Everyone thought that was a dumb thing to say. Trump's an idiot. And it turns out to be right. It happens with so many things. So it is a total abuse of power by the government and the Obama administration. And I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Right, I think if we could get our hands on it. All right, next, Measure 101 has passed. That was just happened this week. So what it is I believe it's 0.7 or 0.8 tax on hospitals and 1.5% tax to insurance companies. Insurance companies are allowed to pass that tax on to their customers. Only 40% of eligible voters actually voted on this bill, and I believe it was like 65 to 35 yes and no. Interesting, I thought this was interesting. The no campaign had raised $126,000, while yes raised $3.6 million. You know, no shocker that ended up the way it did when you see those numbers. Any comments? Trump today announced a deal, not official, to give citizenship to 1.8 million illegal immigrants. Only 700,000 immigrants are covered by DACA, so there's obviously 1.1 million to go to people who don't qualify for DACA, or I'm not sure what his criteria is just yet, but and then in return he wants 25 billion to go to the wall. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, in this deal that he planned laid out, it would be like 10 to 12 years before they actually got their citizenship, which is convenient because that means they wouldn't be able to technically vote in the next two elections. So I just thought that was an important detail that was probably left out, is that it wouldn't be an immediate thing. It would be should be like a path to citizenship. Okay. So they want to be kicked out of the country, but they want to get official citizenship.
Those are my topics that I brought today. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about that happened this week? No, I know we're over time. So last game of the week. All right, thanks for coming. And Candice, will you be here to chat a little bit after?
Happy to stay as late as I need to.
All right, well, we'll be here next week, same time, same place.